Welcome to the IAB UK Podcast.
Hello and welcome to Futurescape 2030 and Beyond, a 5-part mini-series of the IAB UK Podcast, where we're exploring how advertising, media, consumer behaviours and technology will evolve in the coming years. I'm James Chandler, Chief Strategy Officer here at the IAB, and in this series, I'll be joined by experts from across the industry to unpack the biggest shifts predicted in our Futurescape research, all from a set that's technically a studio, but spiritually a living room, in that everything looks comfortable, but nothing's actually had to endure any toddlers, pets, or glasses of wine. Futurescape is all about what comes next, offering a glimpse of where the industry is heading and how to navigate it with confidence. And if you're listening to this in your ears right now, don't forget you can watch the full episode over on the IAB's YouTube channel. Worth a look if you're curious about whether podcasting is ready for my close-up. In this episode, we're looking at the power of communities and why tapping into them will be at the heart of smart planning by 2030. From Reddit threads and Discord servers to in-game guilds and niche social spaces, communities are offering advertisers the ability to connect with audiences in more authentic, value-led ways. To explore this, I'm joined by Sabrina Francis, Strategy Partner at the 7 Stars, and Chris Bales, EMEA Senior Sales Director at Activision Blizzard Media. We're talking micro-communities, Gen Alpha, AI influencers, and just why creators are starting to feel more like media brands. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Chris and Sabrina. Chris, what's exciting you about this rise of community at the moment?
Look, I'm going to be huge. Firstly, thank you for having me. Very comfy living room here.
It is.
So yeah,
welcome.
What a spot. And it's nice to be not around my 10 and my 6-year-old for an hour or so. So yeah, grateful for the break. What's exciting me, look, I'm going to be hugely biased because gaming communities for me are clearly on the rise. I feel that at this point where it's almost like it's how social was 10 years ago. And what I mean by that is this movement's been happening. It's been getting a lot of traction for a while, but it's naturally communal. Communal is how people game, is how people get together to go and meet friends and family online. Even probably more so than going out if you're starting to look at the younger generations these days as well. So I think it's really, really exciting in terms of the opportunity to tap into this audience. And, you know, the biggest standout for me with this gaming community is the attention that you see as well. I don't feel that you necessarily get that across any other media at the moment. Very, very unique in that space. And when we go out to talk to brands, we talk about imagine being able to reach a user. Imagine being able to tap into an audience at the most attentive part of their day. And that really, really encourages me because as part of a wider media mix, I'd never say you should just use gaming. Of course, I come from an agency background. Why would I do that? But as part of a media mix, I think it's a really rewarding element to have on your plan. And once brands start testing these and tapping into these communities in an authentic way, you'll see the results. We see it time and time again.
What brands kind of embracing this as well, Sabrina? I mean, you know, from a planner, a strategy point of view, sort of, and Futurescape tells us demographics and targeting by age and demo is kind of dead. These sort of rich communities are far more a way to go. But are advertisers excited by this space as well?
Yeah, I think so. It's a hugely new space, and I think a lot of advertisers are still working out the best way to work with macro influencers, let alone these micro communities. And I think there is potentially a hesitation because we don't know, for example, whether it's, regulation or, we know media channels are more fragmented than ever. And then here comes more, micro communities, and that also means more fragmentation. How do we navigate that within the broader media mix? But I think we are excited as brands, as media agencies, and actually it's not just in those, categories that are really obvious for marketers, like, this is a really cool beauty space and micro communities. Actually, it's those spaces where people are coming together because they are not having their needs met by kind of mainstream society. So, for example, we've got, Bronte King has set up her community around girls who don't feel safe when they go traveling. So it's called Girls Who Travel. And again, I think this is such an interesting space. Not only does she talk about the places that she's traveled to, but she actually organizes trips. So she acts like a travel agent. You go into her community, she's putting itineraries together for girls to come together. She's usually goes on them with them. So it's about connection. Yeah. And for me, if you're, a brand advertiser, you're trying to be different. You want to get into those spaces that are really answering people's needs that mainstream or macro influencers or spaces aren't currently doing.
And do you still think about it as, the way we grew up in media was very, very channel led. You had a radio team that did radio, you had an outdoor team that did the same. You then had these kind of digital people that came along, and that started to span across everything. I guess these communities are spanned across lots of things. Chris has talked about gaming, but they almost don't fit into that old channel world that we grew up in, maybe.
No, exactly. And I think that's it. I think that's why everyone has to lean into it across the agency. This kind of stuff just sat within, the partnerships team or the social team. Now we're all having to get on board and go, this is a media, cultural powerhouse that we need to get on board with. This is, all of a sudden, the insight team of a real platform now to go, this is not just about us putting together a little trends deck now and again. This is us really getting into what these micro communities are talking about. And I think that's super exciting.
What are the brave, the sort of the lean-in advertisers doing? Because gaming has a long kind of history, maybe some misconceptions around it as well, which I kind of feel like we're beyond. But what are those advertisers who've been in it with the long run with you guys? What have they been doing well?
Yeah, sadly, I think there still are a lot of misconceptions around gaming. But you look at the brands who are doing well in there or reaping the reward, should I say, in there at the moment. They've been testing and learning, but also to Sabrina's point, it's so important to be leaning into your insights team and leaning into our teams as well. They are experts in this space, and what these brands have done well is leaning into us, looking at maybe some of the research we've done around the many ways we play, which looks at these different categories of gamer and where they show up, what platforms they show up, what games they play as well. Because again, you look at the way some of these smaller micro communities, if you like, have started, and now I'll give an example of Halo, for example, The Last of Us. Now they're bleeding into popular culture, even with Minecraft, probably the biggest movie of the summer, right? Yeah. And you look at where these games started, though, and you look at the advertisers who have been on that journey with them since the beginning, and that's where we're seeing successes, and to the point where these brands that have just tested, running some really authentic content within those spaces are now starting to actually build experiences out in those spaces. And I think that's where it gets really, really rewarding. But it shouldn't be scary either, because we've got all the proof points here. Exactly as Sabrina said, the insights team are absolutely loving this, because finally we have the proof points to show how brands can show up in an authentic way and where they show up and what they need to be talking to. I think that's the journey that we're seeing the brands that are having success go on at the moment. They've been ingrained in terms of what we're doing. They're leaning into every element, and they've just tested and learned.
Is there some intrepidation along the road somewhere, Sabrina? And again, to sort of hark back to the old traditional model, you'd get some ads that would be creative for some spaces. You go and put the ads in the spaces. You'd buy it, negotiate it would run. You'd work out. I mean, this is asking for a completely different model. You're talking about experiences. You're talking about online and offline things happening. It's a different way of working for brands, isn't it?
Totally, yeah. And I think that's it. We've got to readjust how we approach it. This is not about slapping a logo somewhere. This is not about the traditional sponsorship model. This is really about getting into micro communities. This is the biggest cultural engine we will have. But the way of it is, we need to get our hands dirty a bit and understand who's behind it. But then, as I said, I think the trepidation comes from the fact that there are, these places are often, unregulated. There's going to be, there's bad apples in everything, right? Yes. We've seen numerous examples of when, influencers have bit too much influence. And that's over kind of big communities, you know, the Love Islanders of a few years ago are currently in trouble for a bit of financial misguidance. Let's put it that way. So I think, you know, we do have as advertisers, we have a duty of care still to make sure that when we are looking into these micro communities, you know, who's behind them, who's sharing advice that actually might need a little bit of checking. Are they experts? Again, we just need to have that. Yes, they are authentic spaces for us to be in, but let's just be aware that there's going to be a certain amount of regulation that's needed to make sure, you know, we're protecting the people that we're talking to as much as we're protecting the brands that we work for.
And is it that have brands got, I mean, Chris talks about this idea of like brands showing up. Have all brands got the same sort of permission to show up in these spaces, or is it only the ones who sort of really understand the rules and how you work with some of these creators?
That all depends on how they show up. I think this is not just about broadcasting to an audience. Through micro communities, you're showing up in someone's basically digital living room. This is not just hi, we're here, we're a one size fits all solution. You know, this is going, you know, what are the personal things that people are, you know, want to talk about? I mean, you know, we talk about Peanut being a very interesting and, you know, really getting up there in terms of audience. And as a relatively new mum myself, I think it's so, you know, that access to people that are going through the same things as you, that empathy, even the language you talk in, the kind of inside jokes that new mums have. I think it's like brands need to understand that. This is not, again, you know, you've got to change your tone, how you show up. And that's it, you know, that people are in these communities for nuance. And you have to understand that nuance, you know. And I said, as I said before, you know, being part of a new mum community, I don't want to necessarily listen to my mum who went through it like 30 odd years ago, because advice has changed loads. I don't even really want to read about kind of a blanket solution on, like, you know, when I search on Google for why isn't my child feeding correctly. I want people that are going through it at the same time as me, who've got empathy. And I think that's what brands need to get.
Got it.
Is what is that in the moment nuance? And then how do you show up in that way that's the most useful for that community in the right way?
Yeah. To do that, you need this kind of deep understanding of the platforms and the creators. How, because you guys have got the keys to that in terms of who's on your platforms. You can't just bowl up in what you're talking about with some sort of global nappy ad that's been adapted for different markets. How do you tease out that insight? How do you understand more about these sort of deep communities, surface it for people like Sabrina and other advertisers? Yeah,
I think, well, it's all about value exchange. It's all about showing up authentically and then providing a value exchange, because the gamer community, for example, they will let you know if an ad is bad. They are militant when it comes to talking about bad ads. But there's this often misconception that gamers don't like ads. They don't like ads. They just don't like bad ads.
Yeah, none of us like bad ads.
This is the point. And, you know, I think, again, not all platforms are created equally. Not all communities are run in the same way. To Sabrina's point, you need to see what's behind that. Who's running that community? Who's leading? What does this game stand for? How do people feel when they're engaging with that game? And I think that's how you show up authentically. And, you know, we will spend a lot of time nurturing our brands, showing people how they show up and making sure they can do that in a really, really authentic way. But that's the only way to do it, I think. It's the only way to be able to stand out in that space.
Yeah. Research shows that millennials were the most researched generation ever. Gen Z must be coming pretty close. How much thought are you giving to Gen Alpha is going to come after that, who, of course, you know, they're going to be native to gaming and those sorts of things? Are there sort of circles at Activision thinking about Gen Alpha and you know, this audience in 2030 is going to come to the fore and they're going to be there ready to be talked to from messages from advertisers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the way that you look at how we're setting ourselves up as well as a business at the moment, obviously we've started as a mobile platform, we've now got PC available, we've now got console. We're obsessed with understanding where our users show up and obsessed with helping advertisers work with them in a unique way. I think the way that the gaming kind of model, if you like, or the gaming business is going as well, has changed hugely. You know, think about from when we were kids, and you'd go up, maybe
you were a lot older than me.
Yeah,
but go
I
on.
know. Okay, I knew that was coming. I walked into it. You'd go and pay 50, maybe £100 for a game at some stage, and that's not the case anymore. People can't necessarily do that. People can't afford that. People aren't willing to do that. And gaming companies as well now need the right brands to work with them on partnerships and show up as part of their community. And I think that's really, really exciting. When we think about Gen Alpha and how they engage, they see the world in such a different view to what previous generations have done. And gaming is very, very native to how they consume and number one entertainment form as well. So why would you not want to be learning about that now and starting to embrace that now? If you look at it in terms of eyeballs and time spent, it's bigger than the music industry and the film industry and the sports industry combined.
Wow.
So we're seeing, I think it's something like 3.4 billion gamers globally at the moment. That's supposed to that's a third of the world's population. That's supposed to move to half the world's population within the next 5 years.
And that's everyone casually gaming on mobile, though, through to kind of what you'd term hardcore kind of console PC gamers. Yeah,
all the way through. And it's the accessibility as well. If from an Xbox perspective, you look at all screens being able to be an Xbox, that's Phil Spencer's vision. Limitless play, Xbox anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think if you're starting to think about that younger generation, giving everybody access, giving people the opportunity to tap into this gaming audience is really, really powerful.
At Adweek back in April, you were arguing, you just talked about how influencers got too much influence. You were playing the role, perhaps, of suggesting that they do, but you were just saying perhaps they have got too much influence. Tell us a bit about that debate and how you got on.
Yeah, that was, hilarious. You know, talking about influencers maybe not being as influential as they'd like to be in front of a crowd of mostly influencers. It was very humbling. It was humbling. But I think what I was trying to argue, which was to say influencers are not the problem. I was trying to advocate for more balance, and let's not kind of overindulge. I did a very kind of a bit of a diet reference to say, we've all been on diets and things, and we think that we followed random things where we go, eating 5 Freddos for lunch is totally the same as jack potatoes. So you can do it. And you get that quick sugar hit and you think that's great. But then you realise you're actually not feeding your overall health. You're just following this trend that's not going to really get you anywhere. Yeah. And I kind of tried to relate that to influencers going, let's understand, let's not overindulge in just one part of the plate. Let's understand that the fact that traditional media channels, for example, still do drive so much consumer influence, and let's understand how influencers play into that mix. They are still very much sometimes seen as being the strategy, but they're a tactic, and we need to consider how they sit versus the rest of the media mix. And there's a lot of research. I've totally overquoted him because he's brilliant, but
Chris Bale.
No, you too.
Not on this occasion.
Not on this occasion. But a great professor at Oxford, Felipe Tomas, has done a lot of academic study over influence, and has seen that influencers still are quite far down when you come to when you look at different channels. So TV. We all like to think that TV still doesn't drive the same effect as it has previously, but it still has big influence. And shock horror, word of mouth too.
Wow.
But influencers still got a way to go.
Yeah.
So I was just, I guess, imploring the audience to think of how we not only, again, think about how influencers play into that wider media mix, but also go, measurement still has to catch up, right?
Yeah.
This is the really big hole that gap that we've got. We are influencer marketing is not as accountable as the rest of the media channels, and brands are plugging more and more money into it. We know that Unilever was in the press talking about putting up to 50% of their marketing budgets into influencers. And then my response is, but how do you know that's working? Where's it going? So again, we really need to proactively find ways of measuring influencer marketing versus the other channels on the plan. and adjusting accordingly, right? And how can we get to a stage where influencer data at the moment is super fragmented? How do we really standardize influencer data and then start to feed that into media, marketing mix modeling to understand the real impact? And we know, everything that Chris is talking about, we know this is such a huge opportunity for our industry, but let's not run before we can walk. We know we've got decades and decades of data on how our other channels perform. So let's just be cautious about overdoing it.
And the measurement point is a fair one, still a nut we have to crack.
It's really, really fair. It's a great point because, and again, we put measurement at the heart of everything we do, but it's knowing what you're looking to solve for. That's the first question. Exactly. We will have multiple brands still come to us. What can I do? How can I show up in gaming? I was like, well, what are you trying to solve for?
Got it.
Because we can build communities, we can build universes. If you're looking at partnering with a Minecraft, for example, that's well within the realms of capability.
Yeah.
But what are you trying to solve for? Like, what are your OKRs? What are the goals that you're trying to get out of this? And I think it's so important, and working with a great media agency, working with a great partner on that front to really make sure that is being aligned. And, whatever community, or if it's gaming community you're tapping into, understanding that role within the plan and the subsequent measurement to back it up, I think is key, because otherwise we're going to see advertiser upon advertiser come in, test it. Oh, I don't know what I gained out of that. I have no idea.
It may have worked, but not in the way that I...
No idea.
And in terms of like that job to be done for gaming, is it the same sort of brief? When you sort of scratch it back, is it, I want to drive brand awareness, so I want to do association? Is it, I want to sell more stuff? And I think hopefully you're going to say it's a real mix of everything. Yeah,
it is. I mean, we've always kind of spoken to being top to middle of the funnel, right. But the more, it's quite funny, the more brands we speak to at the moment, I can mention Lloyd's. We did an incredible app relaunch with Vicky Handley and her team a good few months back, and again, if you speak to her about the results that she has seen, she would say it's operating in that kind of messy middle, right. If you like, in terms of it has the obviously incredible at driving awareness, incredible at driving attention, but the attention scores are so strong that they end up pushing purchase intent, driving app downloads.
Got it.
And she had some incredible proof points around that as well. So I think that's for where we look to sit. But again, it's what you're looking to solve for, because and how we play out versus other media.
Yeah. Can I ask you, we talked a lot about human connection, we talked about real life experiences. Let's get into AI influencers. Yeah. Futurescape says that, creators are really going to split in two ways. It's, that human need is still going to be there, but we are going to see this rise of AI influencers as well. Is that on the cards, do you think, in the next 5 years? You're starting to see this kind of bubble up?
Yeah, it's slowly, but do you know what? There's something in it, definitely in it, because maybe unpopular opinion incoming. But
Claxon's just going off everywhere.
Oh God, cancel her.
Could you get cancelled off the Futurescape podcast? Let's see.
See what I'm about to say. No, not really. I think a lot of our chat about micro communities has been about that authenticity, human connection. But I think a lot of us just like to, humans like to aspire, right? We like to fantasize. We like to sometimes see kind of visuals of perfection, because that's quite a nice escapism from real life, right? So, I was talking to some friends the other day and going, isn't it funny how we grew up in a world where we used to see, obviously, like supermodels modeling lingerie, and now obviously... And quite rightly, we're seeing more, inclusivity and fashion, all that kind of thing. But someone said, actually, I really miss the times when we used to see someone who had a much better body than me. And I was like, wow, okay, you need help. But also, what she was trying to say was, I think when we look at, when we're watching TV, we're watching ads, there is a kind of world of escapism that you want to feel like, you're escaping to. And I think maybe that's what AI influencers do. And, you've got one of the most famous examples is Nunuri, who is, I think she's got about 500,000 followers now. Casual. And she's, she's a singer, she models, she's all the, and she just looks really cool. She's like a cartoon character.
Yeah.
But, I think it's quite cool. And actually, if you're a brand, the idea of being able to super customize everything you do, like partner with her on, she was a Swarovski, model, which is quite cool. And, it's brand safe. You know that she's probably not going to be embroiled in some scandal because we made her up. Yeah. So she's completely brand safe.
Does what you want.
She does what you want.
Replies on time.
Well, exactly.
Meets the brief perfectly.
Exactly.
But it feels like you're saying it's not this binary choice.
It's not a binary choice.
It's going to be a mix of both.
It's a mix of both. And you go, yes, we absolutely need that human connection, authenticity, but we still need to dream.
Yeah.
We still need that escapism. So let's have a mixture of both. And where it's appropriate, I think AI influencers give us that opportunity.
Yeah. When you think about the gaming element as well to this, I think again is quite exciting because human connection is what gaming's all about, right? That's you go there to meet your family and friends. But quite exciting for me actually because a little secret, I'm absolutely horrendous at Call of Duty. Horrendous. And there's this, there's shocking behaviour. I mean, mainly because I don't have the time.
You on if we'd known researchers to do a better job.
But it's just, I know, apologies. Should have fessed up. But you think about how empowering it could be if you could have an AI companion or an agent, somebody to help you in that, or an influencer in that element, an AI influencer built for your specific game. Suddenly that becomes a lot more inclusive to get people back involved. In these franchises that are, say, like 20 years old, such as Call of Duty, can still continue to grow their user base. So I think, a personal opinion here around the AI element, but you can look at the Xbox podcast and not as good as this, and you can look at the Xbox podcast and various other gaming podcasts that are out there, and they will talk to this new level of community support and being able to empower players through AI. So I think it's really, really exciting if you start thinking about influence in that space as well.
And just to jump on that, actually, I kind of learned a shocking fact a few weeks ago, which is that actually the number one use for AI agents for the young generation, 18 to 30s, is not for homework or kind of creation. It's actually asking questions about mental health. So, for maybe there's pros in that, maybe there's cons in that, but we talk about it not representing this human connection. Well, actually, the younger generation are looking to it for human connection. They're searching their own symptoms and trying to self-diagnose and trying to have that kind of non-judgmental person on the other end, whether it's AI or a real person. So I think we've got to remember that this isn't someone we're not representing people talking to robots here. It's just another voice. So again, I think there is a bit of a grey area in that in terms of how young people are using AI agents. So again, it's a really interesting space.
It's a really good point. To finish, I'd love from both of you, creators, influencers, communities that you would recommend people watching and listening this to follow.
It's not necessarily looking at influencers, I wouldn't say, in gaming. I think, you look at, we always say a rising tide raises all ships. So the emergence of Discord, for example, is an absolute winner for our industry. So I think definitely leaning into those communities, understanding what they're saying, and being able to have a point of view within that community as well, I think is a really, really powerful thing as well. So I wouldn't necessarily say, specifically follow any creator when it comes to gaming. But I think if you're looking at the likes of Discord to learn, if you're looking at the likes of where Xbox is going to learn, I think that's a very, very interesting space. And naturally, I'll be biased towards that as well. But the way that they're empowering the gaming community is it's something to watch because it's only going one way.
Yeah, and I remember the first time I went into Discord, I mean, it's not really like any platform that you've been in before, and you need a little bit of humility to be like, I don't really understand this. I mean, you learn pretty quickly, but you have to go in with that attitude that you're going to go in there and learn stuff from people. And just the first time you use Reddit or any of these new platforms, there is a little bit of, you can't just plug and play to how you've done things before.
No, exactly.
Who's on your must-follow list?
Oh, as I said, do love Peanut. Just be aware of very super keen mums. Just before you've just had a bit, before you've had the baby, they're like, "Can we meet up? We're about to have a baby," and you're like, "We have nothing in common apart from that." So yeah, beware of how you use that one. But I think there's some really interesting. As again, I'm more around the kind of different subject matters, whether it's study groups happening on Discord. Again, we're coming out of this post-pandemic. A lot of kids have had to be on their own when they've been studying. And I think what these micro communities are offering is that real solidarity and that support. Yeah. When people are at home and doing something solo. There's also these amazing grief groups that are coming out on like Substack and that, where you're going through something again, but you're looking for people who are going through the same things as you. You may not have access to a counselor or a therapist, that kind of thing. And again, those spaces are really interesting to me, where it's actually there's a real gap in society, in mainstream society, in terms of access to services. And I think that's the amazing thing that these communities offer is that support, that solidarity. We get what you're going through. And also I'd like to advocate for an AI politician at some point.
Be decent, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe we're not that far off.
Well, I know.
I'm excited about that. Yeah, I would be excited about that.
And it's the same as Chris's point with gaming. Don't make the assumption just because digital's the mechanics making it happen that it's any less human of a connection. No. I mean, grief or whatever it might be, there's still a human connection. It's technology making it kind of happen.
Absolutely. And I think where it becomes really powerful is when as I said earlier, when with Bronte King, what she does is she's at the center of it, and she's your friend. She turns up in she is in real life going on these trips with you.
Yeah.
It's amazing how it can go across commerce and social and real in-person experiences. That's when it gets super powerful. That's what for me is the difference between macro influencers and celebrity sponsorship and all that. That's where this micro community really taps into, is the personal touch.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you, Chris. I'm off to eat 5 Freddos for my lunch now.
Yeah,
inspired by you. Yeah,
You're
great.
gonna feel sick.
And there you have it. Whether it's Discord or Peanut, the rise of micro communities is changing how we connect online. A huge thank you to Sabrina Francis from the 7 Stars and Chris Bales from Activision Blizzard Media for a fascinating conversation about the rise of micro communities, the role of AI influencers, navigating fragmentation, and, as Sabrina perfectly put it, how brands can authentically show up in someone's digital living room. To delve further into these themes, head to our Futurescape study via the link in the show notes, and join us here next time, where we'll be exploring how cultural shifts will redefine aging, reshape household structures, and impact traditional targeting, all in the lead up to 2030. Thanks for listening and for watching. We'll see you next time.
IAB UK, building a better future for digital advertising for the benefit of everyone.